Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking something I can practically guarantee every single one of you has experienced at least once. We're looking at the hidden psychology behind why we sometimes make awkward moments so much worse than they actually need to be. We're going to break down the exact mechanisms in our brains that take a tiny, microscopic social misstep and turn it into an absolute mental catastrophe. I mean, have you ever watched someone accidentally make an awkward moment 10 times worse and then realized against all logic that person was you? Just picture this. You're walking down the street, someone waves, you enthusiastically wave back, only to realize with absolute horror that they were waving at the person directly behind you. Instead of just letting the moment die naturally, you completely panic. You overcorrect, you say something weird, maybe you laugh way too loudly. Or how about you're at a restaurant, the waiter hands you your food and says, "Enjoy your meal," and you just confidently hit them with, "You too." Suddenly it's like your soul has left your body while your physical form is just standing there pretending everything is completely normal. Okay, let's dive into this. Because what is actually happening in your head in that split second? Basically, your thoughts stop flowing naturally and start sounding like this chaotic, panicked committee arguing inside your skull. The literal second an interaction goes off script, your nervous system violently shifts into observation mode. One voice is yelling, "Why did you just say that?" Another is screaming, "What are your hands doing right now?" Followed immediately by, "Act normal," and then, "Wait, scratch that. Now you're acting way too normal. Oh no." So the crucial point here is that psychologists actually have a clinical term for this freezing up. It's called heightened self-monitoring. This is that exact moment you stop participating in the interaction and start watching yourself exist inside of it. The awkwardness isn't really about the moment itself, right? It's about self-consciousness. It's this sudden, terrifying awareness that other people can psychologically see you. And while everyone experiences this occasionally, people with social anxiety, perfectionist tendencies, or rejection sensitivity, they experience it constantly. Somewhere along the line, their brains learned that social mistakes equal actual pain, and so they just stay on high alert. And this builds into two very different reactions. For a socially relaxed mind, well, they recover pretty quickly because their brain just doesn't assign catastrophic meaning to small moments. To them, an awkward pause is literally just an awkward pause. But for an anxious mind, an awkward pause doesn't feel temporary at all. It feels defining. The nervous system is treating a tiny social error like it's an incoming disaster. And the deep irony here is that this exact fear is what makes the awkwardness spiral out of control. Because your brain genuinely thinks you are in danger, it triggers this lightning-fast panic response. First, you start filling the silence way too quickly. Then, boom, you start over-explaining everything. Next comes the nervous laugh, you start repeating yourself, and before you know it, you are actively apologizing for things nobody even noticed until you pointed them out. You're frantically trying to fix a tiny weird moment, and in the process, you transform it into a full-blown cinematic event. It's just your physiological overdrive trying to save a sinking ship. And this brilliantly illustrates one of the cruelest parts of this whole experience, the spotlight effect. It's our psychological tendency to consistently overestimate how much other people are actually noticing our behavior. Honestly, most people watching your panic barely even care. They are way too busy worrying about themselves to analyze your awkward interaction nearly as much as you think they are. The embarrassment inside your head is astronomically larger than the embarrassment outside of it. Emotionally, though, it feels like the entire room just permanently archived your mistake. Which leads us to the dreaded timeline of the cringe loop. At 0 seconds, you have the incident itself. By 2 hours in, on the drive home, you're replaying it. And then there's the 6-year mark. You know exactly what I mean. Staring at the ceiling in complete darkness at 2:14 a.m. Awkward people tend to have incredible imaginations, so they don't just experience embarrassment once, they replay it, edit it, magnify it, and rehearse alternate versions of it. Your brain literally becomes this intense Netflix documentary narrator covering the worst 5 seconds of your life. Like, here we observe the human saying "love you" to the waitress after receiving ketchup. It is absolutely devastating. But now, here is where we're going to flip everything we've just talked about completely upside down. You are an emotional firefighter. Seriously, if you are constantly monitoring reactions, you aren't broken. You are actually, most likely, a deeply empathetic person. You're scanning for emotional danger all the time, which means the literal second a conversation becomes tense or uncertain, you immediately feel responsible for fixing it. Every silence becomes smoke. Every strange interaction becomes your personal responsibility to solve. You rush in to rescue the moment because, well, your anxiety simply hates silence.
But taking on that much responsibility requires an exhausting amount of mental processing. Just think about the calculations happening in your head in real time. Eye contact, tone, timing, facial expressions, posture, word choice. It's a lot. Social interaction stops feeling natural and starts feeling like this performative dance where you're simultaneously analyzing every single muscle movement in your body. It is completely overstimulating. You notice everything, the slight shift in someone's voice, that tiny facial reaction after a joke. And eventually, all that intense analysis just destroys the natural rhythm of the conversation. Meanwhile, the other person is literally just standing there wondering what they're going to eat for lunch.
But then we have to ask, why does safety change everything? Because think about it. Around trusted, safe friends, so-called awkward people are often completely different. They become funny, relaxed, expressive, maybe even wildly charismatic. Why? Because safety turns that exhausting monitoring system completely off. Your true personality was never missing. Fear was just sitting on top of it. In fact, many deeply awkward people become incredibly entertaining because they've spent years learning how to creatively adapt and recover from discomfort. Humor literally becomes their way of transforming embarrassment into connection. Let's just slow down for a second and look at the difference between trying to be perfect versus being authentic, because that replay, that internal cringe loop we talked about earlier, it is lying to you. The people who truly matter emotionally usually don't remember your awkwardness nearly as much as they remember your sincerity. Humans do not connect through perfectly smooth, rehearsed interactions. Honestly, perfectly smooth people are kind of terrifying. People connect through authenticity. Trying to be perfect is exhausting, but just being yourself, awkward weirdness and all, is what actually builds lasting bonds. In fact, science backs this up beautifully through something called the pratfall effect. This is a proven psychological phenomenon where competent people actually become more relatable and likable after making minor mistakes. Tripping over a word, spilling a little bit of coffee, laughing at the wrong time. These small imperfections don't destroy relationships. Perfection creates distance. It is our humanity, our stumbles, and our vulnerability that create genuine connection.
Which brings us to the absolute core truth of this entire explainer. Awkwardness is deeply, deeply human. If you recognize yourself today in the over-explaining, the nervous laughing, or those desperate attempts to fix the moment, please know that your awkwardness didn't come from a lack of social intelligence. It came from awareness. It came from sensitivity. Panicking just means you care deeply about connection, and you are desperately trying not to be a problem for other people. The people who make awkward situations worse are usually just people trying desperately to make them better. So, I want to leave you with this final, vital question to think about. What if connection was never built through perfection in the first place? The goal isn't to become perfectly smooth. The goal is learning that awkward moments are entirely survivable, that silence doesn't equal rejection. Sometimes the people who stumble through conversations are also the people who feel the deepest. So be a little gentler with the version of yourself that's still learning how to exist around other people. Let go of the rehearsal, embrace the stumble, and remember that being beautifully imperfect is exactly what being human looks like.